So that song was written by my dear friend Tom Kimmel. It's the only song that I know of that is about being thankful for the stuff that didn't work out, the stuff that didn't feel so good at the time, and being able to go, even if I couldn't see I was strong, here I still am. How else would I have known that I could make it through that if I hadn't made it through that? And so we're talking today about learning from the past, not living there, not wallowing in the past, not trying to pick it apart piece by little piece by little piece, but learning from it, taking it for what it was, looking at it with the eyes of the present, the eyes of the wisdom that we have today, because going back into the past is probably never a very good idea, but we can bring some of that forward toward who we are now and take a look at it, because we can only, just like the future, we can only, we talked about a couple of weeks ago that if you want to know what your future looks like, look at today. All the propensities for how you're going to be in your future are here with you right now. And unless you change your propensities in this moment, then you can assume that down the road, maybe the things that are happening will be different, but the way you meet those things and hold those things will be very much the same. Same thing with the past. It was what it was, but how we look at it and how we hold it in the present makes all the difference. Makes all the difference in how our lives run. So we see it from here, and we know that that sight is limited. It's limited by our own perspective. It's been said that you can put 12 Zen masters, like Zen masters have made it all the way up through the states of enlightenment, right? And still, every one of them will give you a different perspective, because there are states of enlightenment and there are also stages of life, stages of growth. And so we only ever can see truly from our own limited perspective. But the moment we know that our perspective is limited and we choose to employ our empathy, then we can broaden our perspective. We can't exactly know someone else's, but we can use our imagination to help approximate those other perspectives. And we can use our imagination toward helping us to build compassion, rather than how we often use our imagination, which is to assign motivations to other people that make us feel more righteous and them more wrong. If you're going to be using your imagination anyway, why not use it toward compassion for others and for yourself? Ultimately, all compassion that you share is compassion for self. So the point of view is in us. It's always in us, And we don't know the past is going to be the past until we've gone through it. I'm finding as I age, tell me if you've found this before, there are a lot of things that I did for the last time, and I didn't know it was the last time. I used to be a runner. I loved running. I didn't know the last time I ran that was going to be the last time I could run, because now I have fake knees and I'm not allowed to anymore. Maybe I would have approached it differently had I known. So I can get all maudlin and go, I can't run anymore. Or I can know that wonderful freedom and beauty for what it was then, and know that today I have the freedom and beauty of being able to walk because I have these new knees. Yay, right? It depends upon how we hold the past. Do we hold it? Because the deal is, the past is not alive. Think about that for a moment. It's not alive. Now, you can bring it into your life right now, but it itself is not alive. So everything from the past that you are carrying with you now is your story of the past. And you have absolute control over how you tell the story of your past, how you hold it. So we can hold this, the last time we did this, as a precious memory. We can hold it as a horrible loss. We can hold it as deprivation. Or we can hold it as, I had it. I'm thankful that I had it. Like Tom says in the song, thank you for loving me. even though you left me. So much of the time, they leave, that's it. We color the whole past that happened before that, according to that. How dare you leave me? All those times I thought were good I only thought they were good because you ended up being someone who hurt me. You know what? Maybe all those times that you thought were good were actually good. And maybe even the leaving was good, even though it hurt. These are the ways we can look back at our past, bring our past forward into our present, using the wisdom and the maturity that the tools that we have gained in the present to help process the past. And not to indulge in anger at ourselves for not appreciating what it was, right? We can have some regret that, I really didn't appreciate how great that was going to be. You know, this year I faced that probably my and Bob's last trip to Scotland is going to be our last trip to Scotland. We were not able to go on our planned trip this year because of his health. And that hurts. It hurts. And we got to go to Scotland several times. And we had love there, and we had joy there, and we have memories of there. So I get to decide how I hold that. I get to decide, and I can appreciate now. The other thing that we tend to do with the past is we tend to think of things as defining moments. This happened, and often trauma, we hold that as a defining moment. It does not define us until we decide that it defines us. Once again, we have choice. We have freedom. We have choice. We have choice to see it from the point of view of today and not the limited point of view from the time. And we get the choice to use our empathy and imagination to walk a mile or stand a moment in someone else's shoes. The perspectives, the pains, the soul work, the agendas, the baggage, the propensities that we carry with us. We carry all those with us all the time. Whether we know it or not, we have them. So when you're talking to me, guess what? You're not just talking to me. You're talking to my perspectives, my pain, the soul work that I've done, my agendas that I'm bringing into the moment, the baggage that I've carried or chosen to put down, and my propensities. You're talking to who I've become through the sum total of not just my inborn predilections and personality, but also my experiences. And not just the experiences themselves, but how I've chosen to hold those experiences, what I've made of them. Right? So that is true for every single person walking the planet. This is a lot more complicated than it looks. Isn't it? But when we can start to know it for ourselves with compassion and with love, like, geez, that wasn't just me. That was my tiredness this morning. That was my whatever it is we're carrying with us at this moment. We're not just us. We're all of those things. And we can be very kind to ourselves if we choose to, because we understand that. Or we can choose to not be kind to ourselves because of that. We can choose to denigrate ourselves. Our choice. I know what I want to choose. I know what I want to choose. The other thing about the past is it's not personal. It seems so personal. And as I was writing this, I did this exercise in my mind. I just chose a memory from my childhood that was a painful memory, and that I have used in telling the story of my childhood to illustrate how horrible, in so many ways, how horrible my childhood was. Or just to illustrate how I felt at the time. And I'm just going to share it real quick. This is not for you to feel sorry for me. I have worked through it, and I am fine. I have tools. But one time my brother was abusive in my life. We were playing checkers in my bedroom. And I had to go to the bathroom, and I got up off the floor to go to the bathroom, and I accidentally hit the checkers board. The background is my brother always won at checkers. Always, 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 always. Great strategist. And so he immediately got angry because he thought, in his mind, I screwed up the checkers board just so he wouldn't win. And he took his fist and came down on the top of my head. as hard as he could. He was 12. From the time my brother was 9, he was taller and bigger than every teacher he ever had in elementary and junior high school. He was a big guy. Came down, wow, and I still remember how that felt, like I saw stars. And I screamed out. And the next thing I heard was my dad from the living room across the house going, "Melinda, what are you doing to him?" My parents never saw my brother's abuse. They just, for whatever reason, they could not see it. The 3 girls in the family saw it. And so I started thinking about, okay, what are the other perspectives here? I know mine. I know my frustration of, really, again? Will no one ever see me? How is this my fault? And then I started thinking of my dad sitting there in the living room, tired from a day of work. There's Melinda yelling again. I can't say that I didn't yell. I can't say that didn't happen. I can't even say that I wasn't sometimes, perhaps, a tiny bit dramatic about what I was yelling about, right? All he knows from his perspective at that moment is his peace is being disturbed. Is Bobby destroying his peace? No, I was destroying his peace. Okay, I can have some compassion for that. For my brother, I have great compassion because I think that from the time he was little, he was saying, "Somebody give me some limits, please." And no one ever did. No one ever did. And so he grew up without those limits. And I don't always share this from the pulpit, but well, things that I used to hold as my closely guarded secrets, I now just spill out from up here. My brother is in prison and has been since 1995. And I see that as a direct result of him never having been taught limits. So who's better off here today? I also started thinking from the point of view of my little sister, who was a lot smaller than me and couldn't stand up for herself even as much as I could, and sometimes wouldn't even scream when screaming was the appropriate thing to do. And how even though I was being abused, I didn't see her abuse as what it was, and how hurt and damaged she was by it. Now, if she wants to, she can blame me for being there and not doing anything about it. I don't know if she does, maybe a little bit somewhere. But see all the perspectives that are going on there? Her perspective might have been, oh, there's Melinda being dramatic. Worse stuff is happening to me. All of these perspectives are happening. But today, what I know is people can be mean to me and I can be okay. People cannot listen to my truth and I can be okay. People cannot listen to my truth and I can still stand in my truth and tell them anyway. And if they don't hear, that's on them, not on me. Today, I can know that there are many perspectives. I can know that maybe in a lot of ways I was the lucky one. Maybe in all the ways I was the lucky one. I wouldn't have wanted to be my father who, as a parent myself, I wouldn't want to not listen to my child's pain. I wouldn't want that. So maybe I was the luckiest one among all that, So yes, I could tell the story to say, poor me, I was so abused. But I could also tell the story to say, you might have not been trying to show me the light, but somehow you're leaving it on. Because I know I can still stand on my own. I can still stand on my own. So it's not personal. The past is not personal. Everybody's doing their stuff. And if you think they're doing their stuff to you, the truth is you were present for it, but they were just doing their stuff. And in the same way that we learned, Don Miguel Ruiz so beautifully talks about how it will change your life to not take things personally today. It will change your life to not personalize the past too much. Everybody was just doing what they could do with the tools that they had at the time. And some of them had really bad tools. Thank you. That's a better word than the one that was floating through my head. Some of them really had bad tools, right? And so we don't have to personalize it. And we don't have to bring it into today as a living story. It's no longer alive. My brother can't hurt me today. My dad can't hurt me today. I can hurt myself today. I can use my dad and my brother to hurt myself a lot today. If I want to, I could do that every day. I choose not to do that. I choose not to do that. And if you ever want to know that there's more than one perspective, if you have siblings, or even like maybe people you went to school with or something. Have everyone describe one single incident that you were all present for. That's not what, no, that's not what happened. Remember, he was over there and she said that. No, that wasn't her who said that. They said that. The police will tell you that eyewitness accounts are the least reliable evidence, because we have our perspective. We can't get rid of it. We also have, besides our perspective, we have our interpretive choice. We're telling the story, right? So we want to be the hero of the story most of the time, or the victim of the story, because that sometimes serves us as much or better in our sick way of thinking. Or were we just a bystander in somebody else's story? Maybe the story wasn't about us at all, we just happened to be there. How do we want to hold it? How do we want to interpret it? Because we can look at all of that. Well, I was a little bit of a hero and a little bit of a victim and a little bit of a bystander, and none of it's personal. How can the information from whatever that was in the past, how can that information, impersonal, no one's fault information, serve me in the present? How can I use that information to make more sense of the world as I see it so far? And I can look back and say, how did I use it to make sense of the world as I saw it from then? And I know how I saw it from then. But now I got a whole bunch wider perspective. I can take that same story and go, whoa, not about me at all. Not about me at all. Didn't have to make it. And today, the sense I'm making of it is the sense I'm making of it from the perspectives that I can see so far. That means tomorrow may be a completely different thing. Or it may be that tomorrow I can't even remember that story. I don't know, right? So we get to choose. We get to choose if we want to look at our past. I would say that there is a lot of our past that we have dragged forward with us. We have forgotten that was not alive, and we are breathing life into it on a daily basis and letting it affect our present. And what I say is bring it to light so that our present can affect it rather than it affecting our present. The wisdom that we have today, just knowing, hey, I'm still here. Sometimes that's an extremely powerful thing that we can bring. Bring it forward, not back. Bring it forward with the strength, the knowledge, the wisdom, the safety that you have in yourself today, the love that you have in your life, the protection that you have promised to hold for yourself and maybe for others. Bring it forward into all of that today, and then you can respond to it differently. I promise you can. You can receive it with wisdom. You can receive it as wisdom. I invite you to just take a single memory from your life and try to apply this to it. Try to see it from the other perspectives. Try to bring it forward into who I am today. And then a technique that you can use is to take who you are today and put it back there. You know? What if Big Melinda, who knows everything that Melinda knows right now, walked into the room with that girl who just accidentally kicked the checkerboard? What would I say to her? You know, mostly I would say, I know that hurt, and I'm so sorry it happened to you. And you have no idea how glorious your life is going to be. You're going to do the coolest things. You're going to have so much love in your life, you're not even going to believe it. So kick the checkerboard, cry if you need to, and come on with me. We got a better life going. We got a better life going, because this is not, by the way, to go back and change the past, right? I didn't actually change that it happened, but I changed the story as I brought it forward. It happened once. And then every time I think of it, I'm making it happen again, because I'm telling the story and I have control of the story. How am I going to tell it? Because we can change the story, not to excuse the behavior of others, but perhaps to understand it, and sometimes to actually sort of remedy it with our new understanding. If we wish it had happened in a different way, our imagination in our story today can give it a different outcome. What? You can change the past? Why not? It's just a story you're telling today. And I am not saying this, let me be very clear, this is not about denial. It's not about pretending that something didn't happen. It's not about pretending that that something that happened isn't affecting you today. It's about looking at it and bringing it into the light of today and giving it the whole perspective of what you have to offer it today, and giving all your compassion to the you that didn't have that whole perspective at the time. And you had really no choice but to take it the way you took it then. Now you can take it differently. Even if it's just to give your love and compassion to that former you and assure that former you that there are better things on the horizon. The other thing that we can do with our past is the older we grow, the more and more we can put it in proportional perspective. When I was 20 years old, the 7 years of truly abusive alcoholism, where I lived in my family where there was abuse and alcoholism going on in a really, maybe the alcoholism had been going on for longer, but it really got belligerent and abusive. 7 years. I was thinking about that, 7 years, and I let that define me for so long. At this point in my life, what is the percentage of my life that is 7 years? It's gotten a lot smaller. At 20, it was almost half my life, you know? It was a third of my life, and the third that I had been most cognizant for, perhaps. At 40, no, it's a sixth. As I grow older, it's less and less and less. If I reach 70, that'll be a tenth of my life. Am I going to let a tenth of my life define who I am in the rest of my life? No, my answer is no. I'm not going to let 50% or 40%. I'm not going to do it. Last week, I had this amazing opportunity to go on a music writing retreat in New York and see people who are dear to me that I've known some for 15, 20 years, who I hadn't seen in a long time, to allow some of my creativity to come forward. And I got to say, the first day and the last 2 days of that trip were horrible. Bad stuff with Bob's health. And so you can ask me today, how was your retreat? And right now, I'm pretty raw. And the last 2 days of the retreat, when I was scared, are ringing within me. And that's okay. I can give myself a lot of compassion for that. But I'm not going to let that define that whole week. If that had not happened, I would not have been able to experience the outpouring of love from these people that said, "What do you need? We are here for anything. We'll come." They brought me food to the hospital. They took shifts to be there with me. They just said, we know you have to be here, but anything else you need, let us take care of it so you don't have to. You know, I wasn't trying to be shown that particular light. And yet they turned it on. And it blesses me. It blesses me in this moment because I choose to bring that story forward. Apparently, I'm loved beyond what I might have imagined that I was. So I get to decide. And the further I get away from it, probably the less scary the scary parts are going to be. And the more wonderful the wonderful parts of it are going to be. But even today, I'm going to say there were some good days there in the middle. There were some good days there in the middle. We get to decide. That's the point, the larger view. And in the Buddhist view, this is one of the main things that the Buddha said, which is really being held out in today's science, is that we are not one continuous life. We are a moment and a moment and a moment and a moment. And we see it as connected in the same way that when we're watching a film, we see one connected piece. But if you take a look at that film, it's a frame and a frame and a frame and a frame. They just happen so fast, we think they're all one thing, but they're not. They're separate things. And so the Buddhists say that in each moment there is a birth and a death. Every single incident of your life has a birth and then it has a death. But inherent in the death is the rebirth in the next moment. And they're not just talking about the reincarnation of your physical life on this planet. They're talking about the reincarnation of the next moment and the next moment and the next moment, over which you can practice. And meditation is one of the ways that we practice, in which you can practice being conscious and knowing that that last moment was no more the truth of you than is this moment, than is the next moment. That they are all a vignette that has come and has passed away. So giving that new air into the way of thinking of your life is everything arising and falling and arising and falling. And every arising is followed by a fall, and every fall is followed by an arising. Because life is eternal. There's no, that was the last fall and now it's done, right? The soul is eternal. This life, this thing that I call Melinda Wood Allen, that's not eternal. But this life, whatever this unnameable thing is that animates Melinda Wood Allen, that's eternal. That's eternal. And so every fall, no matter how far it is followed by an arising. Every death is immediately followed by a birth. And if we can begin to practice ways to think of our lives like that, then we are empowered. We are empowered today. So we get to learn and release. Learn and release. Don't try to pretend the past didn't happen, right? I take credit for the stuff I lived through. I give myself that 7 years, I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen. It was a hard 7 years, and oh my goodness, what I learned. And one of the most important things that I learned that informs me every single day of my life is that life is a lot harder for people than you ever think it is by looking at them from the outside. Because during 4 of those 7 years on my way to my job, which I had to get a third job because I had to move out of my parents' house because I didn't feel safe there anymore. On the way from the bus stop to that job, I passed by the hospital where my dad was the administrator. And I knew a whole bunch of the doctors and the pharmacists and the nurses. Everybody knew my dad. He was very much like Bob. He was a very charismatic guy. And as I would make that walk, they would go, "Hey, are you Melinda Wood?" I'm like, yeah. Your dad is the coolest guy. Oh my gosh, you are so lucky. Oh, what a cool guy. I wish I had a dad like that. And I remember thinking, if he only knew. Right? But that, I'll tell you, just as a learning point, that was the truth of my dad too. He was the coolest guy. And he was an alcoholic. Yeah? Which can really mess with your cool. Can really mess with your cool. And his cool came back to him. But, I get to choose. I get to choose. I get to learn. I get to give myself credit for having lived through that. The fact that I lived through that gives me infinite compassion today. It helps me have compassion for you. It helps me have compassion for me. It helps me have compassion for people that I don't know and will never meet, but maybe I'm watching their actions and wanting to judge them. I know that doesn't happen to you, but it helps me to have that compassion. Maya Angelou very famously said, when we know better, we do better. I couldn't do any better when I didn't know any better. But now that I know better, I can do better. That's what learning from the past is. Now that I know something, I can do something different. In the meantime, I don't have to beat up on who I was. I can give a lot of love to that. Live and learn and release. Thank you. So, let's take a couple of those ideas into meditation. Just allow yourself to be completely present right now in your seat. One way of learning to be present in the moment is to follow your senses. As you breathe, feel what it feels like. As the air comes in and out of your lungs, feel what it feels like, the places where your body is touching itself, touching the bench you're sitting on. How do your feet feel inside your shoes? How does it feel to have those shoes braced against the floor? To feel yourself from the inside out and to hear. There's no such thing as silence. There's the piano, there's my voice, those are obvious. There's the hum of the air conditioner. There's our own breath and the breathing of other people. There's even the rustle of our clothes against our clothes. Distantly, there's the hum of traffic from outside. Allow your senses to ground you to this moment. And the next, and the next, and the next. You don't have to try to make yourself anything. You are 100% okay, perfect, beautiful, as God made you in this moment. So perhaps allow that thought and allow yourself to accept the truth of that thought. What if I didn't have to be any different than I am right now? What if everything I am up to this moment is completely sufficient? To allow me to give a compassionate and loving perspective to every part of my life that has happened up to this moment. I invite you to look at something in the very recent past, not a huge thing. It might even be breakfast this morning or an interchange that you had on the highway on your way here, or a conversation with a family member. Just allow something recently past to float up. And as you breathe, just know, I perceived this moment. I perceived it with what I was aware of at the time. And there are an infinite number of other ways to perceive the moment. Perhaps I can open my heart to perceive the moment from the point of view of the other person or people who were present for it. Take a moment to investigate whether I've assigned them motivations that I can't actually know anything about. And bring the compassion of this moment to that moment. It may be simply the understanding that, oh, I thought that was about me, and maybe it's not. And breathe into that. Or maybe you still don't feel good about that moment. That's okay. But you can introduce the thought that I have a choice. I can decide how I want to feel about that moment going forward. Perhaps whether that moment was a good or a bad moment, you can take it into the context of a long day. 24 hours during which uncountable births and deaths, arisings and fallings and arisings again, are gonna happen, are happening. And perhaps something that seemed important at the time, and that perspective isn't important at all. Or perhaps there's a kernel there that still stokes some fire within you, some emotion, some reaction. I invite you in this moment not to try to change that reaction, but simply to hold it with compassion. Maybe name it. You were angry. You were hurt. You were confused, annoyed, bored, frustrated. Maybe you were joyful. Maybe you felt infused with great love. Resist the urge to call it good or bad, and simply give it your compassion. There was a moment, an illustration of what it is to be a spiritual being living a human life. And maybe whether it felt good or felt bad, we can call it beautiful and perfect to its own purpose. And know that every moment can be perfect to its own purpose if our purpose is to awaken. Every single moment that we can bring awareness to whatever is a moment that we're awake. And really, that's all enlightenment is. When the Buddha came out of his meditation under the Bodhi tree, people looked at him and they could tell something is different. There's something about you. What? Who are you? What are you? He did not say, I'm the leader of an entire religion that will last for eons beyond my life. He said, I'm awake, that's all. I'm awake. And so in this moment, in every moment, there is that invitation to be awake. To bring all the love, all the skill, all the compassion, all the passion, all the knowing, all that we have learned, to bear on any moment, whether it be from the recent past, the distant past, or the very last moment before this one, or even the moment that we are now anticipating as next. To simply be awake and fully alive to who we are. Thank you, God, that we have this ability to wake up at any time, no matter how many times we fall back to sleep. There is another arising. We get to awaken again. And so it is. Amen.